Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first AI live chats on LinkedIn. This morning, exactly. We started our Tech for Business podcast back in April of 2022, so almost 4 years ago now, since we went on tech tangents and figured out that we needed a timer so that we could stop talking. So we said, why not? We're trying 4 weeks of going live on LinkedIn, which means if anybody's joining us live, feel free to throw in a comment and we'll do the best to answer live verbally. We may have to go back and do some written later. If not, you can always watch the recording later. You can head out to citsolutions.net/podcast, and that's where all of this will live. But we've got Kyle this morning joining us, CIT's president and CEO. I'm Kelsey, your host for this 4 weeks of chaos. And this morning, we're pretty much sitting down with Kyle and going, so what does a CEO ask AI at 11 p.m. on a Sunday to get ready for the week?
I always thought we got it. I am probably not the atypical CEO. So just to put that in perspective, that'll probably become a little more apparent as I say what I was doing. We're recording this on a Monday. So what I was doing last night around 11 or probably shortly before, because I was probably actually in bed at 11. But I just Kelsey's side with it. I'm a huge AI enthusiast. So I have been playing with OpenClaw, and I've been pretty much living in Claude code for the last 2-3 weeks at this point. So there's a ton of experimentation side that I'm doing to prep with it, and I'm giving it all kinds of tasks to assist with insight into the business side of it. So maybe just to give people a little background on how I'm seeing value. So Claude Code, if you're not familiar with it, is basically has their Claude Code, which I'm not using it all for coding. I am coding and building apps with it, but I am using it basically in an agent model. So basically allowing it to run on my local computer and do things for me. I'm giving it tasks to do. And some of the big tasks that I'm doing is I created connectors into our line of business application sides from our Claude business account. So basically has insights into our ticketing, our PSA system, our professional service application. So I can see our customer tickets, our support. It can see our sales opportunity stuff on it. It has a connector into our financial. So I can see our NetSuite data. So I can see how our financials are looking and that information side of it. It has connectors in, it can see and read my emails, my team chats, and those other sides. But it's basically like an executive assistant is basically how I use it, but it's a very smart executive assistant. Claude has this unique ability side with these skills that basically are prompts, customized prompts that are called upon when needed. So I think on the skills, you can say, well, I got a skills to do CIT branding. It's got a skill to understand how we use Halo. It's got a skill for what I'm needing on NetSuite. It's got a skill for our remote monitoring management platform. It's got all this knowledge and skill that I've fed and allowed it to build it. And again, I didn't have to know it all. I just had Claude Code help me build it. It says, hey, this is what I want to build, and it helped me build it. All this is just running on a local directory on my MacBook. That's basically all it is. This is not a robust site. It's a series of files and directory stuffs on it. I work in a terminal there, and I just chat back and forth in this terminal. I launch it, this Claude, in the mornings. I say morning, and it knows then based on I have a morning skill, it gives me my schedule for the day. It looks at I operate a to-do list in a Notion account. And this gives me basically, it can read that to-do list and it updates that to-do list for me, and it can see kind of what needs to do. It says, hey, this is coming up. You have this meeting coming up. Do you need me to prep for that? So yes, I need some notes for that. It'll help me create the notes. It can help me create the presentation and CIT colors and brands. It can help me do research. So again, very powerful side. And I'll typically have 3 or 4 or 5 terminals going with that assistant constantly throughout the day. So if I need something, I will ask it to prep it and go through and gather all those things. That I spend about 90% of my time in there and not in direct chat models anymore. I'm pretty much finding that covers the high percent. So rather than having to go to chat and just sit there and get information, then cut and paste it, this thing is intertwined into my day. So it's far more effective.
Yeah, so it's got all that data. So instead of going into ChatGPT and saying, hey, here's my screenshot of my calendar, which we all know throwing screenshots, great, but also takes time of copy and pasting. And then your desktop folder looks like the chaos gremlin exploded because you have 50 million screenshots that you didn't name.
Correct.
So working through all that and also going, so when you built this to begin with, just connecting to the systems, and yes, you're maybe abnormally technical for a CEO, maybe, not to say there's not other golden geese out there, but when you're sitting down, are you actually writing the code, or when you sat down to build this, are you just connecting it and then plain language prompting?
Yeah, it's basically asking it to do it. So I basically have the AI help me do it. Teaches. I basically say what I want, right? That's basically what I'm just communicating. Say, hey, I'd like to do this. Can you help me do this? I'd like to do this. Can you help me do this? I'm project managing it is probably the closest thing or that I'm doing. I'm just orchestrating. I'm just basically steering it and doing Q&A and question stuff with it. The models, and this really flipped within the last month or so, that are really these latest models. The one Claude Opus 4.5 and then 4.6 is just even more of it. These models, from the ability to do this stuff, are just, they went to a whole nother stratosphere. This was not possible 6 months ago. So it's, again, very recent side of it, but it basically is allowing just to get a lot done and have it constantly go. And I've heard this from a few other people that are in, I hear that term AI bubble side of it. I'm definitely in the bubble where you're doing all this stuff that isn't just easy for a lot of people just to stumble on and do, but highly addicting as far as how much you can get done, to the point that you get a little bit of anxiety over going, I didn't give my agent something to do. I need to, and so you're constantly trying to feed it because this thing is so productive. You just feel like you need to have it. It has to have a task going on all the time. But it is empowering because, again, like you mentioned, you're not cutting and pasting it. It's not asynchronous is the right term, but again, it doesn't require you to be interacting. You can assign a task. You can tell it to schedule. Now, it's predicated that it's obviously up and running. You have the terminal running. So Claude Code obviously has to be running on it to do those things. But you can assign tasks to the cloud and it can take it to the cloud. Now, it loses the local connectivity, so it can do like research tasks and those kind of things. So you can offload to the cloud and it can do things. But you can see where this is going, right? Again, I'm not advocating to say, hey, everybody needs to be working in a terminal and go through those things. Again, I think that is, there's a select people that like doing that, and there's other ones who don't. Anthropic did come out with Claude Cowork, and they did release the Windows version of it last week. Claude Cowork, they say, is Claude Code for everybody else. And it's basically where they're going with it. It's basically to build that into their desktop application side of those, to basically where you have a tab that says Cowork, and you can do a very similar task, and it'll build the skill stuff with it within a short period of time. Again, this type of ability side will be basically to the masses without requiring a whole ton of technical skills.
Activity. And yeah, and you're saying, hey, I've been doing this for the past 2-3 weeks, which we all know we're like, well, that's a lifetime, and AI stuff is next week. I'll say shout out to Richard for saying good morning. Good morning, Richard. Thank you. We got our first live comment, so gold star to you. But yeah, anybody, if you are watching, feel free to interrupt with comments at any time and to say, hey, Kyle, I have this question about Claude. And he'll probably have an answer for it. Or we're going to say, I don't know yet. Wait 3 days. It might come out. So by all means, throw it in there. But yeah, to take it back to, I know earlier, right, you gave the overview of skills. And right, this is something where we've done agent building, whether that's Geminis, or Gems, GPTs, Copilot agents, name it what you want, right? That was, from my understanding, my use of it. Hey, you go, you give it an info base, whether or not that base of knowledge is updated, is you can choose your adventure there. You give it a set of instructions, and then every single time something for like me writing operational emails for Marketo, it has the tokens, it has the base format, and then I can just prompt it and I don't need to give it the context.
Yeah.
When you're looking at something like a skill in Claude, what are either the similarities or the differentiation when people are going, okay, I'm hearing all of these big terms. What does that mean if you had to compare it to non-technical things?
Well, just even set the table side with it. There's a few big things happened last year side of it, and skills is definitely one of them. But to even step back, there's the precursor on skills that was developed and became open source, which basically means it becomes a standard side of those is what's called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP is basically what's abbreviated for, is connector. I've heard the analogy side is USB for agents. It's a standard way to connect external data points, i.e. NetSuite, our PSA application, basically pretty much any platform side of data. Most of them have available now an MCP connector, which basically means you can connect an agent to it, i.e. in my case, Claude Code, could be ChatGPT, could be another things, but basically a simpler way for somebody non-coding to just say, hey, I want to be able to connect to this data so I can use AI to bring this data into context side of it. The MCP will do what they call advertise tools or capabilities, basically. So it'll say for our ticket assist, for example, the Halo MCP advertise says, I do tickets, I do opportunities, I do these things. So when the agent hears me ask a question and say, how many open tickets does this customer have? It knows, oh, I need to use the Halo MCP. The wrapper on top of that then with skills is basically the custom prompt or base set of knowledge that when using the Halo MCP, here is the information and knowledge that's valuable to know. So only when it's needed, it loads the skill. So it preserves tokens, or i.e. the amount of compute and energy and cost that you're using to have the agent gets enabled at that moment in time. So it's this dynamic layering side of it. So skills was other huge enhancement to prevent these large prompts, these large context windows that need to live in infinity where it's not necessary. It only comes in when, and skills also has now been open source, become a standard. ChatGPT has open source, skills. You're seeing skills show up in a whole number of other platforms side of it. I'm sure it'll be in the Microsoft and Google. Pretty much, I'm sure everybody's going to adopt that as well. And it's nice. There's skill repositories out on GitHub where people are creating skills like mad and sharing them. What it means then, it's just getting so much easier to make your agents basically, they can enable the skill whenever they need it. If you're tracking the markets in the last few weeks, the reason that the legal industry and all the software markets and everything else all tanked in the other side is Anthropic released these legal skills and all these other just skills. These are text files. These text files are they're small. And this costs like $300 billion worth of cap reduction in the software market from this small text file that was a legal skill. They released it and the software market tanked. And all it does is then using Claude Cowork, hey, if I'm asking a legal question, it enacts that skill and it knows how to give you some legal advice. That's it. But that kind of power and just efficiency side of that is basically sent everybody in a scare going, nobody's going to need to buy software anymore. It's, again, super handy, those things. I think that's a bit extreme. I don't think it's a direct replacement for purpose-built sides of those. I think, again, it's a huge assistant and makes using the agents easier. It just does. And it makes them more cost efficient, which is the big thing that they've been engineering around as well as, again, the cost of the tokens, i.e. the power and compute it takes when you're using these things. You don't want to send it a whole bunch of unnecessary information. It's just wasted tokens in the AI world side of it. So only send what it needs. So as they develop these things, the usage of that goes down, but the quality goes up. And that's been the combination of those. Better trained models now because of these ability sides of those kind of bring us to where you see the ability of what people are like me are doing with Claude Code. Certainly programmably for development, it is fantastic. I've vibe coded a number of apps, about 4 or 5 of them out now. Works very well. And again, I'm not a programmer. I can't tell you much about the code, very little side of it, but the apps are functioning very well. They work great. And you're hearing this across the board. Not only is Anthropic released Cowork, they developed Cowork in 10 days over the holidays towards the end of 2025. They announced they released it. It was a 10-day development and 100% written by Claude Code. Their developers did not write it. They just orchestrated and oversaw it, which again sent the market scurrying because you're going. So AI is writing AI. That is effective. ChatGPT, OpenAI followed up with their Codex product. Their 5.3 was written 100% by their Codex product. So AI is writing AI at OpenAI. Spotify announced last week that they haven't written their developers, their top developers have not written code since December. It's all written by AI. They're just overseeing it. So it is here. It is, like I said, the last 30 to 60 days, there's a major shift that has occurred. And this year is going to be very interesting to watch just because what it means to me, and I think what's going to be is like the 10-day launch from the core, the amount of new capabilities at the pace they're going to be shown is going to be exponentially faster and quicker and more than we've ever seen before. Spotify said they released, again, I apologize, 13 or 14 new features during that time when they flipped over to AI, which dwarfed anything they've ever done before. They just rattled off how many features they were able to release because they did AI doing it, because they didn't have the labor cost burden of saying, well, we'd like to test this feature. We don't have the 60 man hours to put in to try this. But when they have AI stuff on it, that compression of their time, they could certainly oversee it and have multiple terminals going, and they could put out these concepts and let the users feedback occur. If that feature isn't popular, just remove it. Again, those kind of things, I think that's definitely where it's going. And it's here, and you're seeing it. Every company is moving over to that side of it. So the coding world's changing. I think the personal assistant and the other sides of those is dramatically changing. Then you had OpenClaw come out, which again, that's the other thing I'm up playing with.
Which right before we get into that, because I know that's super cool, just to step it back a second and say, I know, Ray, you said, hey, I use it for an executive assistant. And I know that we said, hey, in this one, we're going to talk about what things do you ask your assistant. I know earlier you had the really cool example of saying, I just say morning, and it does all of these things. So when we talk about being able to do things faster, and right, you threw out Codex, and right, I got access to Codex, and I was like, my OneDrive's a mess. So I just asked it, hey, can you clean up my OneDrive? And it was like, yeah, what structure do you want? And I was like, listen, these are the naming conventions that I use in here. Yep, just let it run. Yeah, I can pick my way through Python, but I can't code, I can't write it. And the fact that it was like, yep, I did this, and then I moved all your things to your download folder, and look, I also color coded it for you. And I was like, can you do this as an automation every morning? And it was like, yeah, what time would you like it? I was like, 5 a.m., please. Thank you. Not like, is it perfect? Not always, but right, I saw something this morning, and it was the TLDR newsletter that they were talking about, and I don't know the proper term, but essentially the rot that happens in code databases, because that's the discussion point that we're seeing is, well, if AI is writing all of these things, how do you keep track of all of these things? And they did a study comparing right pre-AI to AI, and they were like, it was actually worse in pre-AI because it's still a similar problem. You still had people coding in, then moving on to a new project, then a new project, then a new project.
Yep.
And if it were me personally, I don't remember what I wrote 6 months ago enough. I'm like, yeah, you document it. Yeah, but without AI, that takes me forever. Last week, right, when you're talking to MCP, if I had to say one more example, right, I was like, hey, I can connect Monday.com. Well, I've documented everything I've done in Monday.com, the step-by-steps, scribe, I think is the technical tune-in, but it's scribehow.com. If people don't use it, 100%. We are not sponsored by them, but I love this tool, right? I have all those step-by-step instructions, everything in there. And I was like, oh, instead of me trying to manually write SOPs, what if I just ask ChatGPT, because it can see my boards, and it can see all of my comments, and it can see what's assigned to me, and it can see all of the dates and the priorities. And I said, can you just look through? I created 60 SOPs in less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then I just had to manually go through and tweak. And I was like, I don't know the measurement of how long. If you came back to me and said, well, what's the ROI I'm at? I'm like, I gotta imagine that would be at least a week of my work to do 60 manually, maybe less. I've never attempted to do it, so I don't have that benchmark. So I guess what I'm getting at layered here is saying, we'll talk about ROI. That's our week 3. So spoilers, we won't tangent into that today. But when you're talking to, what are some of the kind of just quick hit, hey, I asked it to do this, or hey, I was in a meeting and somebody said, hey, we have to go in and we have to pull this, and then we're going to cross-reference this, and you said, let me just ask Claude instead. Do you have any of kind of those?
Yeah, there's a couple of good examples. Get back to your earlier question side. Like when I say morning to Claude side of it, I basically have that skill set up side of it that it pulls my calendar, it looks at my appointments, and then it looks in my Notion to do side with it and gives me reminders and says, do you have anything to add side of it? Would you like me to prep for this meeting and go through those things? Basically, it brings in some insights inside of those just to set my table for the day to go through it. And I say, yeah, here's some things I want you to do. And then here's a little speed trick side of it. I use a product called Whisper Flow. Again, not sponsored. You hear a lot of it out there to allow you to just voice chat into that side of it. So even though it's in a terminal, I just hold down the function button and I just talk to it. Again, so it's a more personal experience and I can digest or not. The AI can figure out the ramblings perfectly fine. So it works out great. So I just chat. It makes sense of that stuff. Sets table, says, you want me to update those to-dos, do those other things? Yes, please do that. And I know it's captured. It's out of my head. It's downloaded, done. Now I just go out. If I have something coming up and maybe it's an existing customer, those other things on it, one of the great things that it's incredibly good at is, yeah, I have a kind of a customer review skill side of it. So if we're having a meeting side with it, I can say, give me a customer check-in on XYZ customer side of it. It'll pull through all the ticket history, projects. It looks through all this information side of the customer histories, how their accounts receivables look, what's their trend, gives me all this history. Again, AI is fantastic with all kinds of data, but this is going through our NetSuite. It's going through our ticketing system. It's looking at all that information stuff with it. It understands the past chats. It gives me a whole summary and puts it in an Excel spreadsheet and puts it in my Google Drive. Just beautifully formatted, CIT, colorized stuff on it. I can save that out and share it with the team side or go through it. But it's, again, all relevant information stuff, and it's produced in about 15 minutes. Again, from in the past, that would have been a good part of the day, just searching and researching and checking through to get the background to say, how are we doing? How's everything looking? What's the state of the world for this customer as far as their partnership with CIT? And again, I didn't have to ask anybody to do that. Things have to do it. And again, it did a far better job than I would have done manually. It's far more thorough, far more insightful. With the other stuff on it, even gives recommendations saying, hey, you should follow up on this. This one looks like this ticket has gone unanswered a little long. You may want to ask somebody about it. And it knows my team. You want to ask so-and-so about this ticket stop with it. And something may land up on the to-do list, and I just have it added to the do. Now it's tracking. So it's, again, just super out of my head, but its content creation is great. We were in a leadership meeting a couple weeks ago, and one of the topics came up was, hey, we really need to go through and look and identify customers that haven't been active in a while and get them back to prospects, so we make sure we're re-engaging with those customers if they haven't done any business with us in a while. Everybody's looking like, okay, we'll have to figure out how to run some reports, go through this. I'm like, hang on a second. I literally just did a quick chat with Claude and just said, hey, can you look in NetSuite and just see who we haven't, who we invoice, haven't had any activity in the last 36 months? So sure. It created the spreadsheet. We had it in 15 minutes. I had it shared out. It had the whole list in a spreadsheet, put in their side. I said, hey, can you put in and add our account manager side of it? I said, sure. It updated, put all that information in there. And then I went through and then asked it again. I said, hey, can you look in our legacy ticketing system or in our Halo and the other sides and see if there was any sales activity as well and update and correlate that? It said, sure. It went through the amount of points of data that it did on there, again, would have been, I don't even want to venture to guess how many days in heartache that would have been to pull. In this thing, and probably combined, my total prompting time was probably less than 5 minutes of what was doing in the content it created. Again, just mind-blowing for what it can do. That's the power of these MCPs, of those connections, but then the power of the agent to make sense of it all and just the ability to create it in a fantastic presentation way when I shared with my leadership, now they're immediately moving on it. That kind of rapid pace from just the ability to ask. And that's why I think it becomes addicting to some extent, because you're like, well, geez, all I got to do is ask. This thing can pretty much figure out most things. And in the past, again, you're like, you'd have to filter and go, who has the bandwidth for me to ask this information? And a lot of times I wind up withholding it because they already got a lot of other things on their plate. You see how busy their calendar are, so you don't ask people to do it. You're like, I really don't have anybody to assign this to. It's just not going to be a priority. I'll just have to continue on without that information stuff with it. Or maybe I'll just get a partial, try to weed it out. Okay, what's the most critical thing, and just have to navigate to that. Now I think different. I'm thinking, okay, I can solve that. And I think this thing can give me a ton of insight side of it. So pretty much it's very empowering just to say, if I have a question what's in there, I'm very confident that I can have an answer in a very short period of time. And I have something pop in my head when I'm getting up in the morning and have it before I'm getting my first drink of coffee 30 minutes later. It is the ability just to quickly download that is just fantastic.
Well, yeah. And even we're talking in my brain, I'm like, oh man, that is like having an executive assistant just on your phone or on your computer that you can just quickly ask things. But I think you bring up the super valid point of going, in the past, there's different people with different access and different permissions. And yes, that's good. That's best practice. It should be there. But that does mean that if you're trying to figure out the whole customer journey, you're going to multiple teams, to multiple people, trying to hope that they all have bandwidth, trying it's all aligned. You get multiple meetings on the calendar. What I'm going to hear from you, a lot of times you're going, I'm just wondering. I don't have an action item. This doesn't really need a meeting. This could have been an email, any of those memes. But you were wondering to go, I wonder if there's a way. And I think the other piece of it is the data portion is, I know we've seen it. We've heard AI slap. You get the people going, well, I went and I asked it and it gave me all these customers who are actually active. And then you're going, in my brain, I look at it and say, well, what data point is maybe not correct? Because yes, the other friction point of implementing AI is, if your data is not clean, which CIT has been around for 30 plus years, there's been multiple legacy systems. There is no quick answer to say, hey, every system needed the data slightly differently. So this is going to be called something different. This is going to be here. So when you're going those things, how do you handle that little bit of going, you may ask it and it may give you an answer, and you as the CEO know that's probably not right. But then how do you go, well, I'm not technical. I don't want to go back in the code and figure out which thing was wrong and which team. Do you then just prompt AI and go, that part looks weird. Where did you get that? How do you handle it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. You can talk to somebody just saying, I don't think this number looks right to me, and just give it again some context on it. And it's okay, let me check. And or sometimes ask it to say, can you tell me how you arrived at this number? And I'll come back and say, well, this is what I did, and say, well, this is what we need to change that. I want you to do it this way. And it will gladly do it. It has no problems going back and taking another swing at it. Again, you don't take it at first blush, just like anything it goes through, but it does a very good job overall. And get from being able to leverage that again versus somebody else on my team. Again, I think your example of those, I'm just curious. It does. I think that's a great way to think about it. Maybe that's part of the addictive power stuff. It allows you to just think out loud a little bit and not have the people time cost that everybody's got, just an opportunity cost to it. With this, again, I just open up a terminal. There isn't necessarily, the opportunity cost is way down. And again, if I don't like it, oh, that didn't go anywhere, I just move on. So it used some more of my Claude subscription, but again, it seems pretty much unlimited once you're on the max. I haven't hit the threshold yet, and I'm on it all day long. So I'm like, it doesn't really seem to have a cap. Yes, I pay $200, but $200 for what I'm getting out of it, I'm like, that's a steal.
to do a personal assistant who had all the skills to be able to read all these systems and digest the data and get the reports. And right, that was the world previous to AI is you had a dashboard and you had a report and you had a Power BI and then you all sat down and then you thought about it, you talked through it and you're like, well, what about this? What about these tickets? And to have a human who has all those skills and can read all the different kind of data, you needed multiple people. Either that or you had somebody that you're paying a lot more than $200 a month in order to do these things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like I said, just that example with the stale customer listing side that we went through those sides, the value to the organization that saved on people's time, just because that picked up hours and hours of people's time, which gave them opportunity to work on other things that isn't necessarily trying to just shift through the data set side on it. And that's, again, I'm not advocating everybody in the organization needs to have a $200. I don't think that's true, but there are certain people that can orchestrate and get those contents and then share those out to the other team members like that to make sure you do have actionable data that can make a difference for the business and you can move it forward. That I'm very convinced of, that you can definitely move it along very quickly and have strategic license, because the power that people that know where the information is. So again, you can ask it for the right things and then share the deliverable stuff on it. I think that's a very powerful team member to come alongside to empower those key knowledge workers that kind of know what to ask to get people the right information so they can do better in their job. And then you can find other purposeful ways to have the augmentative side of it. But it's been a fun last 30 days. I'm really, really excited to get through those things. The last thing I do is at the end of the day, I have a daily recap side of it. That one basically will pull the state of the company for me side of it. So it's presenting me with more metrics, how much receivables did we receive, where are we at with the overall payables. I'm the CEO, so because here's our cash flow standing side of it. It's giving me a customer health check. Here's customers where we see some trends. You may want to have indications. Stuff. Where my more brain goes is like, you mentioned dashboards. I'm not sure I'm going to need a dashboard ever again, because this tells me kind of everything I would typically go to a dashboard for. And I can have it even monitor for me and just say, hey, I just want you to check periodically through the day. If you see anything, then just let me know, and it will. So you can see where I can kind of see how the story is going to go. It's starting to come into focus where this is trending side of it. And I think it's very exciting, because as this gets, let's call simplified or packaged, cleaner stuff with it, my world is a little bit of it's not pretty, right? It's
Terminal's not exactly a nice UI.
It's techy and highly customized side of those, but you can see the world. It's not a difficult leap. It's not a big gap to make that wrapped and be able to do that. And they're doing that with co-work. You're going to see all kinds of things. And I know we don't have time to go into Open Cloud, but that is the other adjacent side of it. That is the other big piece to that. And OpenAI hiring the creator of Open Cloud over the weekend side of those and bringing him into the fold side of those is only just, again, the other indicator saying this is where they're going. The talk of models and prompting and those things, I think, is going to decline in the assistant, the agent, the taskers, the doer world of AI is really what was birthed. And I think that the world has definitely changed in the last 30, 60 days. And this is going to, I think, be a huge trending side of it that you just want people, I think, outside the bubble to know. Because again, when I'm doing stuff, most people won't understand. And most people that aren't, again, in the AI bubble or what we do have any understanding or know where to even try to explain it. But I think they need to be aware of how it's going to change their world, because as this comes out, I would discourage people start experimenting, start looking at it, start understanding it, because it shouldn't be a fear of losing your job, but you definitely don't. You're going to get outperformed if some people are using these tools and you're not. There's just no way you're going to perform at the same level. It's going to change the way I think organizations measure productivity sides of those, because expectations will rise. They just naturally will, because people with these tools their output's going to increase side with it. So the norm is going to move up. But I don't think it necessarily means that it's just inducing more stress or it's converting over to say you got to move to 80-hour work weeks or anything else like that. I think it can still go down, but your output go up, and just your ability to understand how to orchestrate, how to ask, and what's being able to change your mindset from saying, I don't have time for that, to say, how do I just ask AI to do that? It is going to make you a far more sought after, far more productive. And I think it can make your life even better, because again, this thing can work 24/7. You can be on the beach. I think you can do great things with these things and be able to just take the idea and just chat with it through your phone and send it to the agent, which is again kind of what OpenCloud allows you to do. The thing can just be working 24/7 and send it over, and this team's working on your behalf. Or it's not just the one Claude code, it's a whole team of agents that can task and go through those things. And I think it's going to be very exciting to go through those things.
Yeah. We do have a question from Richard. So thank you, Richard. Do you
Yeah.
foresee AI replacing roles or transforming them?
Probably a little bit of both. Certainly the entry level stuff, again, obviously the executive assistant roles and those things, and because you don't need people to be that interface and be the information gatherer and collector side of those. Those roles really aren't necessary, because you can just have the AI, once it has the connectors, just go and do those things. But you can definitely see potential new roles for people managing how the data gets connected, the communications layer stuff on it, certainly the enabler for making people have the right skills and how they program, how you get people the right access to these tools. And the other sides with it, there's a ton of training, educational knowledge side around it. And again, you still need, the AI doesn't understand our business. The AI can't, at least right now, cannot replace it. It doesn't have the full understanding of kind of what I know about the people, the process, the why I need this information. It knows and has a lot of skills on how to get it, but it doesn't know the why. And I think that's true as you kind of get to other people know the why they do what they do. And people have a unique sense of judgment side of those that is situational side of it. It isn't necessarily 1 or 0. So again, even as good as the AI, I think there's still a long ways to go. And I don't see that as, I think the enabler, enhancer of the people is definitely where you start to hit the home run. Where you get the large multipliers out of those is taking somebody who has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information, or a wealth of skills and ability sides of those, and allowing them to free their mind from the constraints of, I only have X number of hours in the day. And basically you can multiply and they can start tasking things out. Now those people are really high producing sides of those. And I think you're freeing them from a lot of stress, because they want to do more, but they can't. I think I've definitely fallen in that category, and I think a lot of people do. You have a lot of things you'd like to do. You just feel constrained with limited side of it. But I think set up with these tools, you can definitely do that. So I think, got to get back to your question, Richard, replace some of them, but definitely transforming the majority of the ones where you have those top producers, quality producer sides of those. I think it allows everybody to level up, in my opinion. But organizations, we need to map out how to get the tools to the people and strategically align them. And that's where my brain's at right now, side of it, saying, okay, I shifted last week and started working through how I can get these skills, how I can get these. Claude allows you to put them into plugins, basically taking the connector and the skills and combine them together. How we can get these plugins to strategic people in the organization. So I take what I already built and basically take these abilities and give them their own agent, and then say, now you can just go ask these things. And now you have this same assistant side of it, and get them into those strategic user sides with it. I think that's where my brain's at right now, is saying, how do I get, so we can start even having more people do those things. I don't want to be the funnel for the tasker, right? That's these things. I want others just to be able to have the freedom to do it, and then see where they grow from there. I'm sure they can come up with their own skills and their own sides of it. And then that's the cool thing you kind of mentioned is you can just ask it to say, hey, can you do this? Sure. Okay. Help me build it. And then you say, I want you to build me a skill for you to do this. Okay. It'll ask you some questions and go through those. It's very good at building it out, and then it'll evolve. So you can say, hey, as we learn things, I want you to update your skills. It says, okay, got it. And it'll do, it's really fun to grow with use, always a little better every time you go through it.
Yeah, 100%. I know that we're coming up on time here, but yes. And also to say, as an employee of CIT, I have not felt once that you personally at CIT have ever been like, yep, we're replacing all these roles with AI. You're doing these things, but it's definitely not a goal of CIT as a company to replace people with AI rather than look at it like a tool. It's still not its own. It's not iRobot. We're not.
No, again, it's always, we service people, we interact with our customers, and it's the people we interact with. We've always been supporting technology, but it's always people to people side with it. So in my mind, again, less time on internals looking for data and information to get the questions, that we can exponentially shorten that amount of time to get those things to allow more face-to-face, more people interaction side with it. And then for me, even more people time internally side of those, it's more valuable time. It's just getting rid of the crap, quite honestly. It's like, where it's the stuff that you just, everybody goes, ugh, I don't want to sit there and run through reports and those things. Those are great things to throw at it and hopefully grow the business. We don't have to hire as much, obviously. And that's where some of the cost savings comes is, yes, that's the concern. You won't be hiring as much. And I think globally, that's going to be something to figure out how that maps out, but it allows everybody else to rise up with it. And then I think if I was a college graduate and I was coming out today and looking at those things, this is where I'd be spending my time. I would be figuring out how to wield AI and be a very competent orchestrator of those and being able to demonstrate that and find those opportunities, because those are the skills you want people to have. And if you're in the camp of, I don't want anything to do with AI, I'm scared of AI and those things, I would just say, I won't be afraid of it. I think you need to look at it as a tool, just like the internet and the other sides with it. I think you need to start experimenting and give it a chance. And the only final thing is, if your basis for how you've judged AI has been on the free plans from these providers, you're missing a lot. That the delta difference between what you get on a free plan versus what I'm using, say on this $200 Claude plan, it's a whole nother stratosphere. It is shamefully different. So the experience is a very large delta, and you're missing a ton of abilities and a ton of capabilities. So I would not judge your AI results by the free plans. That's not a good basis.
100%. Well, thank you, Kyle, for sitting down and doing our first live. Thank you, Richard. Shout out to Richard for giving us.
Right on, Richard.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to be back next week. Next week, I'm sitting down with Todd, CIT's CISO and COO, and we're calling him the prompt doctor. So we're taking away his Uncle Todd moniker and saying, you're the prompt doctor. So if anybody wants to join us next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time, we're going to be going over, yes, prompting is still a thing, but come give us your bad prompts, and we're going to see if Todd and or some tools can make these prompts better output, give you some examples. But thanks again, Kyle. I'm sure that we'll post your recap, probably AI powered, because it's going to do it better than I can. We'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. If you liked today's episode, share your thoughts with us. Like, subscribe, or reach out at info@citsolutions.net. For more, visit citsolutions.net/podcast. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.